We'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Waddington, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
God our Father, as we gather for this meeting this evening, give us the guidance and wisdom to make the proper decisions. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Cressy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Ms. Twine?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Ms. Lloyd? Here. Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of October 14, 2019. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the October 14th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. Not objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn now to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address any of our regular business items, please step to the microphone, and you know the drill. Give us your name and address and share with us your thoughts or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Two items tonight. On the consent agenda, there's an appropriation amendment number 3 on the agenda. Two questions. Are there change orders of any kind on these items that are impacted by this amendment? And number 2, can a specific dollar amount be given for police and fire overtime that are part of that consent item? Number 2 is on the regular agenda, number 4, which is the grant for $30,000 with a $10,000 match from the city for kayaks, trailers, and other related equipment. The question I would have is has a needs assessment been done to call for the city purchasing kayaks, a trailer, and whatever else would come along with that $30,000? And the concern then would be, are we maybe impacting a local private enterprise, which would be Paddle and Climb, and their ability to do perform their business? I would think that there's a call for training for kayak use that perhaps Paddle and Climb could offer some kind of programming that would, educate people on how to use it, a kayak. As a matter of fact, there's many times, even on the weekends when there's nice weather, if you drive by Paddle and Climb, a number of their kayaks are actually sitting idle, in their parking lot. So I would question whether or not we really need to expend city dollars, which would be $10,000 on our side, to purchase kayaks and a trailer. I see Jason's here tonight. Maybe he can explain a little bit about how this program is going to work. It mentions training, and I guess I didn't realize, or maybe they're going to go through a training process. City staff would go through a training process on how to train people on how to use kayaks, how to be safe, or are we going to hire somebody outside to actually do that? So maybe he can give some more detailed specifics on that program if we get the money. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Schwager.
So slow.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 5th Street. I would like to have Jason explain on the kayaks, too, that we're getting a grant on. We're buying kayaks and a trailer, and I'd like to know how that program's going to work on that, whether you're renting them or what are you going to do. I also see where the golf passes are jumping up $20, and I think that's a lot of money for golf passes, and maybe Jason can explain on that also. And on the appropriations here, there's like $6,200,000 here. That's a lot of money for appropriations. And some are coming out of, this is for the West Side Utility and Project, but then it says issue 8 pathway for 2020 and capital 2020 pathway, and this money's coming out of issue 8, $63,989 is coming out of issue 8 streets. So I'd like to know, where is the financial certification on this? Someone told me that happens at the budget, but this is an amendment. Should there be a certification on this? If somebody could explain this certification to me for appropriations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Arlene Thompson, 1902 Adrian Circle, Sandusky. Sharon hit on a couple of mine, so I'll just move along. But the one that I will back up to is the fire department on number 3, the overtime. We're spending a lot of money, and I say we because it's all of us. We're spending a lot of money on overtime, and yet we're saying we want to provide jobs. Maybe these people who are working the overtime are fatigued and we're sending them out and putting them in harm's way. But I think maybe we should try and add more, which is something we were going to do a while ago with the funding, add fire and police. But instead we're paying overtime. I know that eliminates the price of their benefits, but I think we need to take another look at that. It might be to our benefit to add more firemen rather than overexerting the ones we have. Agenda A, the inspection fee, I take it that we're going to outsource that so that our vehicles can be inspected. Item 1, MAG Group. There's not much information, and there wasn't much information on the internet about MAG Group, but this agreement between them, the bank lobby and converted church space, another grant, okay? 21,000, 15,000. It seems like it's a little's going here and a little going there, and pretty soon there's not going to be any more. Sharon touched on that one. I have a question on the item 5 with the lease to Mr. Cromer. That property is in Margaretta Township. And what income are we getting from leasing that compared to maybe putting that up for sale? I mean, I can't imagine, I don't think it's zoned for industrial. So I can't imagine we'd want to use that 5 acres to put that out there, but maybe we could put that up for sale and get some good hard money now for that property. Item 6. I guess that one was okay. Item 7. We have bids. We're going to be taking bids for this item 7 for the West Side Utility Connectivity Improvements Project. I'm hoping that you take the bids and that you fully research each company that provides a bid and do some research on their former works for other cities, other entities, to make sure that we don't end up with something that will have overruns and such, and maybe problems later. So I'd like to make sure that you vet those folks very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Anyone else wishing to address the commission on any of our regular agenda items? If not, then, is Nicole DeFreitas here? Oh, she is. I just didn't see her back. So, Mr. Wobser asked if we could have an opportunity to have Ms. DeFreitas present some good news. You here, and those at home who follow our meetings on a regular basis, know how Ms. DeFreitas has really brought our transit system to a whole new level. And what she's going to be announcing tonight is yet another new level. So, Mr. DeFreitas, thank you for being here.
Yep, thank you. So I'm here tonight to make an official announcement of some grant awards that we received as of Friday afternoon. These are ODOT grants. They're our normal, our normal 5311, which is our operating formula grant that we apply for every year, the 5339, which is our capital grant that we apply for every year. And this year, the addition, because of the gas tax, they had the OTP2 grant, which is the Ohio Transportation Partnership Program or something like that. So ODOT had these all kind of come together in about a 6-week time. So that's what I've been stuck at my desk doing for a while. And so I was happy to finally see the results of the work. So as you'll see in 2019, our total awards with all our grants that we applied for was about 1.2 million. This year, we received about 2.4 million. So there's a lot of exciting things we're going to be able to do with that additional money. And I'll go into each grant pot of money here. And so the 5311, that's, like I said, our operating and our capitalized maintenance grant. So the operating is a 50-50 match. The capitalized maintenance is an 80-20. So with the additional money from this, we will be able to lease some additional large buses, like the ones that you see going down Route 250. And we'll need those because we'll be able to do 30-minute frequencies on blue, red, and yellow lines, which is going to help tremendously. We've seen capacities increase, as you guys know, 300 to 500% over last year, and which is causing a new problem with capacities. So by increasing the frequency to 30 minutes, that's going to help tremendously. And by getting the additional buses, we'll be able to just keep running the buses back and forth. So, and also with the money, the additional money from the 5311, we'll be able to make the yellow line permanent, which is the line that goes out to Sports Force currently. And we'll also be extending that to Sawmill Creek to satisfy Cedar Point's request with their contract. Now that they own Sawmill Creek, we'll be able to take their employees out to there as well. So those are kind of the big highlights with the 5311, and it's also our operating grant. So, and then the 50% match that we need for this will come from contracts, passenger fares, and different things. And so we got those, and advertising revenue will also be in that. The next grant is the 5339, the bus and bus facility grant. So that is an 80-20 match. With that, we'll be getting 2 modified minivans. That's going to help us take out-of-county trips for in-county residents needing to access hospitals in Toledo or Cleveland. We have a contract with JFS and with the Veteran Services to take out-of-county trips. So by having these smaller minivans, it'll be much more cost-effective for us, and we'll be able to free up some of the bigger buses to do more in-county trips. And then we'll also be, and you can see on the map, creating a long-term parking lot at the Amtrak station. Now that we have Amtrak Greyhound and all the additional buses coming through there, we're having a parking issue. So as you can see right now, it's just a grassy area next to kind of the baggage building that's there. So we'll be adding an additional parking lot. Hopefully between 10 and 12 cars we'll be able to park there to free some space up in the other lot. And the OTP2 grant, this one's really exciting. This was a competitive grant, and this was all funded from the gas tax. There's no local match for this. So with this, we were awarded the creation of an orange line, which will leave from the downtown transit hub here and go out to BGSU Firelands. So it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for the students at Sandusky High to take advantage of the post-secondary classes out there. Also for some job training or different things for our residents. And we've also been in talk with Mucci Farms that have some workforce needs, and looking to maybe run into Huron with that line. So we haven't finalized routes or anything, but we did get funded to create that, so that's exciting. We'll be adding a fiber network at the Amtrak station. So currently Amtrak is the only city building that is not connected into the network. So by doing that, we'll be able to have the police department be able to manually or automatically unlock doors at the waiting room and be able to tie into the current internet and different things and kind of get us off our island that we're on right now. So, and then the final thing will be getting Wi-Fi on all the buses. And that's going to allow us, as you know, a few months ago, we got everything on Google Maps, and that just shows the static times and stuff. By doing the Wi-Fi on the buses, we'll be able to get real-time transit feeds. So people will be able to go on Google Maps or Transit, see where the buses are in real time. We do get delayed with Cedar Point traffic and different things, so this is going to help the riders tremendously to know where the buses are, because they'll be calling, saying, hey, did we miss the bus? And so it'll cut down on a lot of phone calls and just make it more convenient for our riders. And so that's what we got. We're really excited. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. That is a real game changer in terms of the ability to provide a very important service to our residents so that they can do all the things that they need and want to do in life. I suspect that once you go to a 30-minute frequency on the busiest rides, you'll have a new capacity problem, but that's a good problem to have. So, Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Freitas, I want to tell you that under your leadership in our transit system, I think this is the first time that this commission has been able to exhale on this issue. Typically, we, year after year after year, as most of us know, we are fraught with cost overruns and taking money out of the general fund. And I know after speaking with you today that we are on budget and you're doing a marvelous job securing these kind of grants. And our ridership is just literally exploding. So you are serving you're serving our community, not just our community, but entire Erie County very well. Thank you.
Yep, and that's what we're here for, is to make sure their needs are met, and so we're every day working towards that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Waddington.
Would a student at Firelands or someone traveling that line, particular line, couldn't they use their cell phone and see where exactly the bus is too? As far as
Yeah, once we get the Wi-Fi and the
you could use
real-time
your personal
feed.
phone and know it's like 7 minutes out.
Yep,
I think
so-
that'd be really neat. They could stay inside. Okay.
Yep, so they'll be able to see right where it is, and they'll be able to track it live on their phone and see where the buses are, so it's gonna be.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bull.
how soon will some of the features this money is going to bring that help the passengers, like the Wi-Fi, how soon do you expect that stuff to
I'm
happen?
expecting it by the end of the year, we'll have everything up and running, if not sooner. The new route, my goal is January 1 to kick that off, so got a lot of work ahead of me in a short amount of time, but we're up for it.
No grass grows under your feet. Okay. Additional questions or comments? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners, we have a number of communications from staff recommending legislation. Would someone care to make a motion to accept those?
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Are there any of the consent agenda items, Commissioners, that you'd like to have placed on the regular agenda?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Bull.
I think we need to bring down C. There were many questions about it.
Okay, so C is now on the regular agenda. Any other items? Ms. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda? I'm sorry, Commissioners. No, I'm sorry, Ms. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Murray. Item A is the annual payment to Erie County for the 911 agreement. And item B is the annual contract with the Erie County Health Department for bulky and solid waste vehicle inspection services.
Commissioners, having heard the consent agenda items, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move that we accept the consent agenda and declaring that the ordinance and resolution as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinance and resolution, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Cresser, would you poll the Commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance and resolution, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance and that resolution are adopted. Item number 1 then, please, Mrs. Cresser.
Yes, the first item is an ordinance adopting amendment number 3 to ordinance 19-054, passed by the City Commission on March 25, 2019, making general appropriations for the fiscal year 2019, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Martin, maybe we could begin with an explanation. As you've indicated in the communication that you sent us, and we've talked about this in the past, what we do is early in the year, we pass a budget. And then there are items that this commission votes on over the course of the year, typically is what's driving some of these, where there are additional funds that we've directed to be spent on one thing or another. And so this is catching up, in the, if you will, in the paperwork form of our budget, so that our actual expenditures the commission has approved match the budget that we passed at the beginning of the year. Is that essentially correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and then there was a particular, so this would not include any change orders unless those had already been specifically approved by the commission, correct?
Correct. And I don't believe there are any change orders. I believe so.
And finally, there was a question regarding the amount of police and fire overtime, and I think we need to turn to the chiefs and maybe the city manager for discussion about why it is that we choose to do that. But could you know the specific amount of overtime?
Well, I do. Our overtime is down to about $2,000 for the remainder of the year when it comes to the fire department. So we need to add more. I don't know if we budgeted a little lower at the beginning of the year. I'm not real sure. But Chief and I discussed it, and $35,000 is what we're estimating, but it's a pure estimate. So it may not be that much. It could be more. We're not real sure. So we were just trying to get enough to get us through the end of the year for their overtime. But they're down to like $2,000, maybe a little more. But so not enough to cover.
Do you have the number regarding the police department as well?
The police department did not have any overtime. It's just fire.
Misunderstood.
Just fire.
Okay.
There's some services money. Their budget was a little low for services also. That's the other half of the set, between the 35 and the 70. It's another 35 for services, but that's just general services.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
just one. How much money is of this is for boiler replacement at Old City Hall? At Old City Hall, boiler replacement, how much is it?
The boiler replacement is $25,000. And you had asked me about the item number 6. I'm sorry, I got a little confused when you asked. This was approved last week. It's for a full boiler at the Old City Hall. It's not pieces, parts. These are kind of one and the same. This is appropriating the money to pay that bill. It was an unexpected expense that we didn't know of at the beginning of the year, and they're without heat. So just to avoid frozen pipes, you still have rec, court, and police down there, and we don't want to make Chief mad if we don't give him any heat. So it's kind of one and the same. The amendment is to put the money in there, and then the ordinance is to spend the money. So I'm sorry, I got a little confused when you asked that.
Thank you.
Shaberger, do you have something to add?
Yes, there was questions about certification.
Yes.
And this would be a perfect time to jump in because it kind of piggybacks on what Ms. Martin had said. The certifications are for the expenditure of funds. This is just moving funds from one account to another. So there's no need to do a certification of funds. You're just moving it from the right pocket to the left pocket. And then if there is, like other legislation that would need to expend that, that's the one that would need the certification.
I got it. Okay, thank you. Commissioners, additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 2, please.
Item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $21,454 through the Small Business Assistance and Signage and Facade Grant Programs to Ma Group LLC in relation to the property located at 256 Columbus Avenue, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Story, I see you at the podium, and I understand that you have a presentation that you'd like to make in connection with this grant application.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner President. Tonight, I'm here on behalf of MA Group, LLC, my limited liability company for the space right on the other side of that wall, 256 Columbus Avenue. MA Group was formed, I should say, in 2017 by its sole member, Mr. Michael Grayley. Mr. Grayley has approximately 4 decades from grocer to stock boy to running markets like this. His most recent venture was the operation of Vita Urbana, which was a neighborhood-based restaurant very similar to this one within the Detroit Shoreway neighborhood in the city of Cleveland. This project, the description here, 256 Columbus Avenue, which we all are intimately familiar with, is one of the most historic buildings in downtown Sandusky, a commercial bank approximately 100 years old, most recently used as a church site, Calvary Church. This approximate 5,000 square foot space has been returned to its original beauty, splendor, modernizing the space while maintaining its Beaux Arts interior. At the end of this project, we'll have a 3-pronged artisanal food market with a variety of healthy food options for the community, a coffee shop serving breakfast, and a bistro offering a variety of lunch and dinner options, including rotating daily specials and prepared grab-and-go items. From the physical infrastructure side of this, there will be an installation of the fire suppression system, which was neatly designed inconspicuously beneath the cornice. If you ever look up, you'll see it. A modern kitchen, refrigeration, freezer, food storage facility, a small event space in the back for meetings, intimate gatherings, and the new restrooms for patrons of Vita Urbana. Here are some renderings, I should say, of the space. The checkout counter. And this is the sign, which will be right here on the corner. The source and uses line items here, you'll see the total project cost is $188,000. On the uses side, the build out of the space with the fire suppression system totals approximately $180,000. The signage and installation of said sign is approximately $8,600. Under our rules, the Economic Development Small Business Assistance Grant cap is $15,000. The signage grant that we are allocating towards this is 75% of the signage installation cost of $6,454. Which totals the $21,454 number, which was brought before the EDIC committee October 15th. It was unanimously approved and allocated as described before, $15,000 from the SBA side, $6,454 from the signage grant. This project is expected to come online first quarter 2020.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Story. Commissioners, questions or comments? Story, there was one question that came up earlier, and that is regarding the grants. Could you just remind us that my recollection is that we have an amount that we set aside from the entire Issue 8 program that specifically goes to economic development. Is that, so there isn't a finite amount of money in that sense that there's a new pot of money that's made available each year?
Correct. $500,000 is the pot as it replenishes each calendar year. At present, we have approximately $150,000 left in the totality of the grant dollars, and the program itself is broken down into 3 different program pots: the substantial development, the small business assistance, and the signage and facade. And those are the 3 programs I administer.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Mr. Story, you typically stay within in a range of about 10% of what the investment by the property owner is, and I see that you've done that here also. You're just slightly over 11%. So this is nothing unusual. This is not an unusual type of participation on the city's part. Is that correct?
Correct. Historically, I believe this is rather on the low side.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Grayley here.
Mr. Grayley is present.
Hello, sir. How are you?
How are you?
Thank you for your investment in our community. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's exciting to be a part of Sandusky at this time. It's getting national news. It's exciting. Very exciting. And I think I can fill a niche that may be needed. That's my thought, and that's my hope.
Good. Good luck to you, sir. Thank you. Any further questions, commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Story. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady? Yes. Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
Yes, item number 3 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with Ed Perdue and Company LLC of Sandusky, Ohio, for the CDBG fiscal year 2019 demolition project number 1, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Yes, item number 4 is an ordinance approving the fee schedule for the Mills Creek Golf Course established by the city manager pursuant to Section 973.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Sandusky, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington?
I noticed some of the fees were reduced and some went up. It was just a small amount, but as far as the golf course, we're not rivaling any country club. I always give it the beer and lunch bucket golf course, which it is. $9-10, you can play 9 holes. And we're trying to, and I credit Mr. Werling as far as pushing this to get more attendance out there. And next year's the 80th anniversary of the course too, and I think that's important. So I think they got some neat things coming up, and a lot of the amounts end up with the amount of 80, so maybe you could add to it.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole?
just a question. How soon after the course closes can we get some information on how well it did this year? No, you don't have to come, just somebody answer, whoever knows. End of November? Okay, thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Yes, item number 5 is a resolution approving the submission of a grant application to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Parks and Watercraft for financial assistance through the 2020 Boating Safety Education Grant Program for the purchase of kayaks, a trailer, and related equipment for the Recreation Department, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
There's a
I'm sorry,
motion.
resolution.
The resolution. Is there a second to that?
Second.
The motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Poole?
I have mixed emotions about this. The $30,000 worth of kayaking equipment is something that, in terms of priorities, when I consider that I think we need to do work on our basketball courts, our tennis courts, and there's just many other things to do. There was not anything provided indicating a significant demand for kayaking, and I'm without any additional information what the program is going to be like to any large degree. I see us buying kayaks that we don't have a lot of use for more than the few program. If we, let's say next summer we teach some kids to use kayaks. I don't see it as a long-term ongoing project. And so now I'm just storing kayaks that we bought. I would have been much more comfortable with some information indicating a significant demand for the use of kayaks, perhaps a work relationship with where we borrow kayaks from somewhere, whether it's Metro Parks or whoever. Metro Parks have had this, I don't know if they have kayaks, but the point is our investment in kayaks when there's other things that we need to spend money on does not make a lot of sense to me, because I expect them 2 years from now to be sitting someplace in the $10 million storage building we have on Cement Avenue. So.
Mr. Wobser.
Through Commission President Murray to Commissioner Poole, as to the other recreation needs within the city that you mentioned, we have been working really hard over the last several years to make sure we're catching up on things like parks, specifically as it relates to basketball courts and the tennis courts. Both of those are in the 5-year plan with allocations for each of those. J.C. Park and the renovation of Scott May courts, I know Jason is working actively on with Talon Floor, and we're bringing resources to that, and we just want to make sure we do it right and to the scale that it is necessary. And then the tennis courts, we're actively working with the Sandusky City Schools to partner with them because their own courts need to be refurbished. I will turn it over to Jason as to the specifics as to the ban of the kayak, but it is important to note that there's a specific section of the Bicentennial Vision strategic plan for the city that the staff works from that talks about one of Sandusky's strongest competitive advantages being the waterfront and improving public access to it in a variety of ways, including through things specifically like kayaking, canoeing, et cetera, on the back bay. So I do think this is very much in line with the plan for recreation and why we've worked on things ranging from improvements to Lions Park, Shoreline Park, Jackson Street Pier, and then eventually the Landing Park over the last 5 years, and connecting those with the Sandusky Bay Pathway. So I do think this is a really important fit for what we have identified as something that is special about Sandusky, having a bay that is protected from the lake where you can do things like canoeing and kayaking. So I think it is in line with the plan. Jason, I don't know if you have any specifics to that demand.
Commissioner Poole through Commissioner President. We currently do partner with Erie Metro Parks. We do a wildlife at Pipe Creek camp that we've done for the past couple of years. With that program, Erie Metro Parks provides a trailer of kayaks that they actually got from the same grant about 10 years ago. When we take out a lot of kids out into the kayak or out into the back bay or Kiwanis Park, you can only take so many out per certified instructor, and through this grant, which would be anywhere from $1,000 to $30,000, which I don't see us being probably half of that would be half the grant maximum is kind of the area that we're looking at. But right now, we currently work with the Erie Metro Parks, and when we have to borrow their kayaks, they bring them in on a trailer. We're looking to get that similar trailer, but also I would get certified as well to teach kayaking to youth, to seniors, to any population throughout the city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Worling. Mr. Poole?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, how big a program is this? How many people per year, per class do you anticipate doing this?
Through the Commissioner President, we want to expand what we're doing right now. The highlight of our Pipe Creek has been putting kids in kayaks. A lot of kids are hesitant, don't want to get into a kayak, but once they get out on the water, the looks on their faces when we're taking them around to Pipe Creek. Part of the grant stipulates that we have to have at least 4 classes for boater safety. That could be for urban populations, people with disabilities, seniors, and that's we look to do more than 4, but just 4 for the next 2 years is part of what our grant stipulates, and then we keep the kayaks. As Erie Metro Parks has theirs for 10 years so far. We're looking to have that same life out of ours.
Any concept of how often they use them? Erie Metro Parks have had them for 10 years. How many programs, how many children, how often do they do it?
I could get you those numbers, but just from experience, I know there's probably 5 to 8 programs they do each year that would be organized where they take the trailer to, whether it's the Coupling Reserve, out to East Sandusky Bay Metro Park. We've already started a collaboration for June 12th of next year to have a morning paddle at Pipe Creek where you'd go from Pipe Creek to Kiwanis Park, or take an afternoon option, which would take you from Lions Park to Mills Creek. Those are two things we want to do on June 12th of next year.
Chairman, let me suggest that the amount of money that we're involved here is minimal, so I'm going to vote to do this. Going forward, support is going to be for me is going to be based on some concept of how many people in Sandusky are going to actually benefit from this. And since the money's not that much, we'll give it a try. I would suggest that in terms of prioritizing our events, I question whether or not we have enough. We should have a swimming program that teaches kids how to swim before we're dealing with kayaks. Then they wouldn't be so afraid to get in the kayaks. And just for an example, some information about the programs you've done, you did with Metro Parks, how many city children are involved in them would be important for deciding that, yes, we're going to invest Sandusky City money in these things. Lastly, dealing with the manager's comments about the vision, the 5-year plan, bicentennial vision, it is a vision, and it is open to changes at any moment in time. So just because it's on there 5 years ago or whenever it was, doesn't mean that we're locked into it. And so no, that's enough. Thank you. But I'll support this.
I'd agree with you about the swimming, and I know Sandusky's transformation plan and their new pool that they're planning on getting, it's to teach every kid that's in 3rd grade to swim, and that's, you know, getting kids that aren't afraid of the water is a big part of getting them into a kayak as well.
Let me suggest that all of these various plans that we really aren't sure that they're all going to come together. We're doing, I mean, it's necessary for the way we're doing business with various different organizations in the community funding and doing things to kind of make this whole picture come together. I think we need to be very particular as a community about how we spend the little bit of money we have to spend. Issue 8 money is finite, and prioritizing what we spend it on, it just needs to be, going forward, needs to be significantly more than we have in the past. And just because it sounds like a good idea, if you're not able to identify that a lot of people want to do it and are going to benefit from it, I'll have trouble supporting.
Additional question, Mr. Waddington.
We're still considering Ohio Blueway, correct? When Mr. Packen was here years ago, because we had markings in the back East Bay.
The East Sandusky Bay Water Trail?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to do an update on that.
So I think this is fabulous for the community. I might want to jump in one of them too. You know, I know it's just going to be a lot for kids, but it teaches you water safety and the value. We've got a beautiful back bay. You don't have to worry about 4-foot, 5-foot waves. We've had several events back there. I know years ago when we did the pathway, that was the whole process. Now we have the dock down there, so I think this is great.
And as much rain as we had in May and June, we could have used them at the golf course this past year, too.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman. I'll be abstaining, just, I know it's an application, but if awarded, my involvement with Paddle and Climb.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Did you have something, Mr. Brady?
I did. Mr. Or Jason, when I looked at this legislation, I did not perceive this as putting the city of Sandusky in an amusement park business. That's certainly not what this is. What it is a boating safety grant. And my perception on this is that we're a coastal city, and people are going to get in kayaks. They're going to get in the back bay in kayaks. If we have an opportunity through a grant to educate people, whether young people or old people, to more safely operate kayaks, I think it's worth every cent of the $30,000 that we may get out of this. I strongly support it, and thank you for bringing it to us. I think it's an essential piece of a coastal city.
Additional questions or comments? I mean, I applaud it because we're trying new things, right? And we've talked about this before, that not only is Sandusky back to where it was, but we are doing new things and we're experimenting. And I hope this is a raging success. But I hope we try additional things. I hope we don't hesitate to try some new things, especially when it comes to recreation, because we're not sure what people want. And this is an instance where if we provide the kayaks, we will see how much demand there is for them. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I applaud the fact that you're trying new things. We can't always have a roadmap to know exactly where it's going to go, but that doesn't deter you, and so congratulations for that, and thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
And now on the resolution?
Mr. Brady? Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 6, please.
Item number 6 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a 5-year lease agreement with Luke A. Cromer of Sandusky, Ohio, for parcel number 33-0230.000, located at 3807 West Bogart Road, for agricultural and related purposes, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. So the question that was posed, or one question that was posed was, why not sell it? What do we use this property for? Mr. Klein.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the audience and to the commissioners, when this came out, I think back in 2014, I seem to recall 2 reasons that we don't sell it. The first, because it's adjacent to the firing range, and we need it for backup. We want to make sure we have a secure area in front of it. But the other reason is for wastewater treatment plant. We're still allowed to do land application of our sludge, so this is a backup location for that if we ever don't renew our current location with the current farmers. So this is something that it's kind of a backup for 2 different things, and in the meantime, we don't have to maintain it, and we can make a very small amount of money on it. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. Additional questions or comments, commissioners? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 7, please.
Item number 7 is an ordinance approving and ratifying the emergency boiler repair work performed at the former City Hall building, 222 Meg Street, authorizing and directing the city manager and/or the finance director to expend funds for the emergency repair work to Gunlock Sheet Metal Works Incorporated of Sandusky, Ohio, in the amount of $30,842, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Cool.
momentarily, a few moments ago, we were told that we're buying a new boiler. This does not seem to coincide with that. This says repair of an old boiler. I have concerns about boiler as old as these are, putting $30,000 in instead of buying another boiler when we've already budgeted for another boiler.
Mr. Klein, could you address the question about whether these are new boilers, one new, one old, or repairs? What are we dealing with there, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, the boilers, when we looked into this several weeks ago when they went out, a new boiler was about $120,000 a piece for the boiler. So this is for repairs to the existing system. $25,000 is from the capital budget that we have on an annual basis allocated to facility repairs, maintenance, upkeep, those types of things, sometimes new equipment. And in this case, we were able to keep that money, that $25,000 that got to this point in the year, so it was reallocated. That's okay. it was allocated for this repair, so this is exactly what that money was set up for. The remaining money, the other $5,000, excuse me, just under $6,000 is coming out of the O&M budget, and I would say that this was definitely something that I know Police Department, Court, and especially the Rec Department and their programming out there is really happy to get this back up and running so they can put those space heaters back away. So this was for maintenance repairs and also for asbestos abatement on some of the insulation.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
Do you anticipate any other repairs, major things coming down the pipe for that building?
Mr. Klein.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, until that building has a demo ball through it, I can't predict which repairs, but I can say that likely while police, court, and rec are still in there, that there will be repairs that are needed. I have no idea what they are. It's things like this that just come up, and that's why it's important to get out of there as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Bull.
we're required to get bids to do this kind of work. And it's nice that 2 local companies were contacted and only one responded for whatever reason, doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact we had the responsibility to do it. You've had over 2 weeks to get bids from someplace. There's got to be somebody that fixes boilers in the country besides, or in the state, or within the 3-county area. I'm uncomfortable violating the charter just because. It obviously wasn't an emergency. If it took 2 weeks, you could have called anybody and got something. Additionally, I renew appropriation amendment says replacement of boilers. Are you saying we're not replacing the boilers?
I'm sorry, I
Is that what it is? That is a mistake? Well,
my mistake.
at this point, I think we probably, I'm not, with the amount of money it takes for simply replacing small things on these decrepit boilers, I'm not sure we shouldn't just buy another boiler. Shouldn't buy more boilers. I'm not certain, but I think I'm going to vote no on this because you didn't get the required bids for it or estimates. Either one. You could have done anything that made some effort at getting something to keep us within the law.
Mr. Haberger, the suggestion on the floor is that we have violated the charter by soliciting a local firm, 2 firms, to engage in some emergency repair work. Can you address that, please?
Yes, through you, Commission President, Commissioner Poole. Section 24 of our charter says we can alleviate competitive bidding if it's determined to be an emergency, which is what we did at the last meeting. We declared it an emergency.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brady, do you have something?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask, I was going to point out the very same thing, that this was deemed to be an emergency repair at October 14th meeting. And I would be interested to hear how this commission voted on that. I believe the vote was unanimous to declare this as an emergency situation. And that allowed Mr. Klein to proceed immediately with these repairs. We're not in the business of being able to provide deferred maintenance on a building such as this. When a boiler goes down, you haven't got and a boiler that is obsolete as that boiler is, you haven't got a clue how long it's going to take you to get it repaired. Had we reached out and taken our time getting bids, you may have found that the part was so obsolete, it took us till February or March to get it repaired. We have an obligation to our residents to not waste those kind of resources by doing that. And I believe that engineering acted in a very professional manner, and this commission approved that prior to that action.
Additional questions or comments?
Chairman, yeah, everyone. Yes, I voted for the emergency. That simply meant that it took effect right away to me at the time. I accept the fact we need to fix the boilers. They didn't fix them the next day or the day after or what have you. A phone call to meet with the requirements for bidding is fine. I think if you're going to be declaring things an emergency as an excuse to get around the bidding processes, I'm probably going to change my vote on, take a closer look at what I vote to say is an emergency. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments, commissioners? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
Now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
That ordinance is adopted to the great relief of the municipal court staff, the police department, and the rec department. Would you present item number 8, please?
Item number 8 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed West Side Utility and Connectivity Improvements Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Klein, it looks like you're teeing up a presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to you then.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. President, this is, I thought it was important to show a visual. This is a rather large project, and I think the visual that's on the screen right now kind of shows the magnitude and details the magnitude of the full project. So as I go through my explanation of this project, I just wanted I wanted to provide that reference for everybody. So this project, it was originally called the Venice Road Waterline Project, and it started because we had so many main breaks on one of the water lines on Venice Road. It put a lot of the businesses, including Toff's and some of the other commercial businesses, they had to shut down during certain shifts, and that's obviously not good when they're trying to make ice cream and other things. So it was originally planned about a year or two from now. When we were going through the budget, we were going to push it off, but then ODOT told us that they were planning on resurfacing Venice Road in 2021, including Fremont as well. So we moved the project up, and as we moved the project up, we also talked to ODOT to see if they could move their resurfacing back to 22 to make sure that we could get our project completed in time and not conflict with them. So what the project actually entails is a lot of underground infrastructure, and we're going to piggyback that with some surface infrastructure as well. The first portion of the project that you can see on the screen is the red. I'll draw that out first, is a storm sewer that is really intermittently along Venice Road. And then if you look down in that portion on the southeast corner of the map, where Sagamore, Linden, Elwood, Wirtz, and Edgewater, that neighborhood, we get complaints probably half a dozen to a dozen times a year on flooding inside the businesses, over the driveways and into the ground floors in those areas. We do have existing storm sewer systems, but they're in such shambles that we need to replace it. The good thing about this is that we do have 3 outfalls that we'll be tying into. Those outfalls do go directly to the bay, so we don't have to rely on the railroad ditch, which is obviously very important in any situation. The next thing that I'll draw your attention to are the water lines. We actually have 2 water lines out there. The first one is an 8-inch that we are going to be increasing to a 10-inch. That's the line that all the businesses, residences that are along Venice Road are connected to. We also have a 16-inch transmission main that is basically used just to service those subdivisions south of Venice Road and goes out to Bayview and other places like that. So what we're doing is we're replacing that 8-inch main with a 10-inch and reconnecting everybody to that. In that neighborhood on the southeast, we're also replacing that 6-inch main with an 8-inch. And that's throughout the entire neighborhood. A couple of the issues that we're having, and we'll be back at commission for acquisition purposes, is some of the catch basins from the old storm sewer are actually located on private property. So we need to get those out of private property into the right of way, so we need some acquisition for that. In addition, there are 2 properties for along Venice Road that we also are going to need to acquire some land for the water line and the bike path. So with the bike path, what we decided to do here is kind of kill two birds with one stone type of an approach, where we know we have to dig on the north side of the road. That's the side of the road that the bike path is intended to go on. So as we're digging and backfilling and going through that whole process, we are going to be replacing what the typical surface would be with the bike path. That's where, as the funding is laid out in this communication, that's where that $410,000, I think it was, for the bike path money. Yeah, just $410,000 of issue 8 and capital bike path money. That is intended for that surface, to change it out from a normal grass and driveway approach to a full bike path surface. We're also going to incorporate, since it's an off-road bike path, we need the delineators, we need the striping, we need all that stuff as well to make sure that we're keeping the commuter safe. At the onset of the project, the safety out there was very important, not just the safety for the biking community, the cycling community, but also the pedestrians. So we looked at two things that are not included in this project, but I do want to be very clear, we looked at them in great detail. The first thing was taking the bike path. Let me back up a second. You can see on here the green line is the 10-foot multi-use path, which is part of the Sandusky Bay pathway. We originally looked at extending that past Cold Creek Bridge all the way to the intersection with Fremont, but the problem with that was it was very expensive. The bridge is not designed and it's not wide enough to accommodate that bike traffic. So we would either need a second bridge next to it or blow that bridge up and start over with a brand new bridge. In addition, with the bike path on the north side, we would have to do retaining walls. It's very steep on that northwest corner of the bridge where the bike path would be crossing. Finally, we would have to completely redo that intersection at Fremont and make sure that we move the lanes south and driving lanes and turn lanes and all that. So it got very complicated, and even on top of that, as we know, we are hoping to eventually take this path all the way to Bayview. The thought about, does the path go on the north side of the road where the railroad ditch is and where the railroad is on Barrett? That's very difficult. That's going to be the goal. But at the same time, if we can't get that because of property, we may need to cross over at some point. The natural location to me at this point is to cross over at Fremont. So we didn't want to extend it out there and then have to tear everything up. We would have to deal with the railroad, with ODOT, with everybody else. So we figured we'll back off of it now, and we'll do that and look at that in a future phase. The other thing were sidewalks. We worked with the planning department through the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative to also evaluate sidewalks east of Edgewater going all the way to Tiffin Ave. And that would be something on the north side of the road to provide the pedestrians to get all the way over to Tiffin Avenue. Well, when we got a cost back for that, we were hoping that we would be able to include it in this project, but the project got so big with the sewer and water lines, and that sidewalk itself was estimated by the design engineer of around $300,000. So we figured we need to do more stormwater on that side. We want to play those together and reevaluate that in the future with the planning department and the neighborhood initiative. So the question at that point was, how do we get all of the pedestrians and families from the south side of the road where Cold Creek, Venice Heights, those neighborhoods, Thorpe, up to that bike path safely? So as you can see on the south side of the road, there's a black line that goes from Mill Pond to Cold Creek. And at Cold Creek, we're going to be putting in pedestrian flashings and a pedestrian crossing so that they can safely cross. We're We know that in the future, we are likely going to need more crossings, maybe down at Edgewater, maybe even farther to the west. But at this time, that was the best location. Those are $30,000 to $50,000, depending on how you want to do it. So we wanted to make sure we at least provided that one crossing at this time and evaluate how that is working before we proceed with adding to it. So the last two things that I would like to point out is that knowing that this project is going to be bidding now, the contractor probably won't mobilize till late winter, early spring. We have included in the construction timeline of the project that there's not to be any work on Venice Road. They have to maintain 2 lanes on Venice Road at all times between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That was important to us as well. So some of that work on Venice may be pushed to next year, which was also why, or next winter, which was also why we wanted to push the ODOT project back to 22. And as you can see, the majority of this is a sewer and water project. We are planning on going to OWDA for loans. The interest rate, the most recent interest rate that we received was 2.08. That was for the shoreline and the pier. So we're anticipating it being something similar to that, and that was for a 30-year loan. And last, the Issue 8 street money that's on the list as well is, as we're going through that neighborhood with Linden, Sagamore, and Edgewater, we need to resurface that. They ranked pretty low, and we figured while we're out there, we might as well complete the project and finish resurfacing that street. So being that this is a pretty large project, we know that we're going to get a lot of hungry bidders and a lot of interest. We've already heard that people heard that the project was coming out, and a lot of the big contractors are excited, so we're hoping to get very competitive pricing.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Cool.
This is a very large and ambitious project. You've done a very thorough job planning for it. Just listening to all the things that you said, you didn't miss a thing. I think the community, especially out on the West End, is really going to be happy no matter how long it takes us to get it done. As big as it is, I'm sure it's not going to just breeze through, but it'll be well worth it. You've planned it well. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? This is one of the major items that came up when we were doing the strategic planning in terms of what a lot of the West Siders said they wanted to have. They wanted to have this pathway connect them to the rest of the city. A lot of folks don't really remember that it was Venice Heights, the village of Venice for many years, and it isn't all that far back that Venice was annexed. Anybody remember the year? 64? Okay, thank you. Okay, I was thinking 60, but okay. This is long overdue, and I think the folks at home should, and here, I think should take great comfort in hearing the thoroughness of the planning. A lot of communities that don't have control of their public planning, their streets, and water and sewer all under one roof, if you will. What you would have seen is a new road go in that would be paid for by ODOT, and then the city coming along 3, 4, 5 years later, tearing it all up to put in the water and sewer lines. Because we control all those pieces together, we're able to plan that out and get much more return on our investment. So I'm very appreciative of that. Are there any additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
And now on the resolution?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. And that completes our regular items. Mr. Whoopser, we turn the meeting over to you now for your report.
Thank you, Commission President, Commissioners, audience, and staff. I did want to start. Director Klein let me know at the beginning of the meeting via text that we had gotten a late notification from the railroad that next Monday
they're going to close Edgewater Drive, which will impact Tuesday's election. And so we wanted to let folks know that Edgewater is going to be closed next Tuesday on Election Day. There are 2 polling locations that will be directly impacted. One is the Sandusky Service Center, and the other is the Health Department. We are offering free rides on Sandusky Transit throughout Election Day, which will be the 2nd year in a row that we have done that, but we know that won't necessarily be a fix this for everybody, and so we just hope folks can be aware. We'll make sure we get that announcement to the register as well and put that out on Facebook so that the folks who are planning to vote on West Monroe next week know to avoid Edgewater Drive and to go around through the other part of town. But again, Sandusky Transit for the 2nd year in a row will be offering free transportation to polling locations on Election Day. And just a reminder that our offices will be closed next week on Election Day because of the change brought forth by this commission to add that as a municipal holiday. We have heard that several city employees are actually going to be working as poll workers that day. And we know there's a shortage in Erie County, so we've seen people already kind of taking advantage of that. And we hope that, just a reminder for everyone to get out there and vote. With that, I am going to give a short presentation, which we've added, because we wanted to make sure that the commission was aware. This is something that will take place early in 2020, but before the passage of the budget. And because it is a significant increase in resources dedicated to a new funding activity, we wanted to brief the city commission as quickly as possible that either late this year or early next year we'll be bringing back an item for you to consider that normally would wait for the budget passage in February or March, but we wanted to get out there with it, which we do think is positive news. As we've talked about over the last several years, the passage of Issue 8 allowed us to dedicate new public funding to a variety of infrastructures and types of infrastructure throughout the city that had been unfortunately underinvested in for a several-year period due to the very difficult financial and fiscal circumstances facing the city. We've created new programs to update our city's parks, to update the trees throughout the city, to update the sidewalks throughout the city, our vehicles, which were badly declined, and we did dedicate a significant funding increase to local streets. And ultimately, when we did put funding into local streets, we had done so based on a report that Director Klein and the Public Works Department did that analyzed and gave us an objective score of the condition of our pavement. And ultimately what it said was, based on the resources that we could dedicate to streets over a 5-year period, that we'd be able to hold our score. And so we've been updating that report, and over the last year I've been working very closely with Director Klein and folks in his office, as well as Hank and now Sally in the Finance Department, to really figure out how we could dedicate more resources to local street funding for a few reasons. One is we know that even though as we have invested those resources that would allow us to hold our road conditions steady, that because we made a strategic decision to do some of the worst streets first, which were our cement and concrete streets, they came at a higher price point per sort of block or linear mile, and therefore we weren't getting quite as much bang for our buck as far as the total amount of pavement, but we were taking on some of our biggest liabilities in our worst streets. In addition to that, we knew that, and we've heard from the city commission, we've heard from the public, that is an area that they want to see us investing more. It got to the point where we've shared a lot of good news on social media, et cetera, that oftentimes we'd hear, this is great, but what about the streets? And so, we heard that feedback. We know the city commission's heard that feedback. And so we sat down to say, what can we do to dramatically improve the amount of local funding that we're putting into streets? And so just really quickly, and I will turn this over to Director Klein in a minute to get into the specifics of this, we saw that over a 5-year period, the pavement condition ratings that we've had declined slightly, which we knew that it would, to the point where we were able to pave about 100 blocks total over a 5-year period between 2015 and 2019 due to the passage of Issue 8. But a few things have happened that will allow us to go deeper, one of which is the state passed a gas tax last year, or earlier this year, I should say, that was included in the budget, that Sandusky's share of that gas tax will allow us to put an additional $500,000 a year into local street resurfacing. And if you look to the screens, that shows you the total amount of roads that were able to be resurfaced throughout the city of Sandusky
cumulatively between 2015 and 2019. And to put that in perspective, we were able to dedicate, which was a doubling from before issue 8, about $1.1 million annually into local street resurfacing. So starting in 2020, we'll be able to add an additional $500,000 of funding that comes from the gas tax of the city, which will take that 1.1 million to 1.6 million. But what we're also really excited to talk about tonight is that in addition to that, because if you are one of the ones, and many in the audience are, who follow our budget, you'll see that we've been able to do a very good job over the last several years of holding our expenses under budget. And there's a variety of reasons why we were able to do that. And ultimately, some of those reasons, we were being cautious in certain areas where we make investments, and wanted to make sure that certain things that we were projecting out for costs, that they came out the way that we thought they did. And the good news is they have. And so therefore, we want to announce tonight, and we're going to announce it just for 2 years tonight, for 2020 and 2021. But our goal and our belief is that we'll be able to do this on an annual basis. That we, in addition to the $500,000 that we're adding from the gas tax, we'll be able to put an additional $1 million of local general fund resources into resurfacing, which will bring our total annual investment in local street resurfacing from an average of $1.1 million annually to $2.6 million annually. That is a 150% increase in funding. And to put that into perspective, before turning it over to Director Klein, and you can look at this on the screen, that's just 2 years of resurfacing in the blue on top of the red of what we believe we'll be able to do in Sandusky in 2020 and 2021. We will go from having paved about 100 blocks of the city between 2015 and 2019 to on average being able to pave 100 blocks annually in the city. We have just over 100 total miles of street surface in the city, so we should be able to get to everything within about a 10-year period. In addition to that, and finally, about 10% of that 2.6 million, in addition to going straight into repaving projects, is going to be held aside so that we can make our streets safer, both for cars and automobiles. We've been looking at traffic calming, traffic safety, where it is an issue through the city. And that was something that staff in the planning department have been working very closely with staff in the public works department, members of public safety as well, participating in kind of a staff process where we came up with recommendations last year. And Director Klein said the best way to make sure that those improvements that we've talked about for public safety and traffic were to set aside an additional piece of funding that would then be able to be attached to that. So we're very excited tonight. We know that this is a big change. With that, I'll turn it over to Director Klein, but we just want the public to know, we've heard you hoping for more investment in local streets. We have worked really hard internally, and the City Commission has certainly pushed staff to find more resources to put into local streets. We think this will be a great sustainable program, and that you'll start to see the benefits of it as quickly as possible. So with that, I turn it over to Director Klein.
Mr. Klein.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. That was pretty thorough, but what I can say is we are still working through that list of streets for 2020. We, like with everything else, we're adding, subtracting based on some of the streets that were low were Monroe, but we just got funding for Monroe, so we're not going to do it now, only to do it again in a few years. So we're finalizing that list. We're hoping to have that list finalized at the end of December, beginning of January, to go out to bid early to get a really good price so we can get started on these right at the beginning of the year. With this and with ODOT redoing State Route 6 and Shoreline Drive and McCartney and Pierce and Buchanan, we're going to have a lot of asphalt going down this in 2020. So it's going to be pretty exciting if we can keep the motorists happy.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Thank you, Mr. Wobser. It's not the Affordable Care Act, but as Joe Biden said, this is a big deal. We have been pushing, I think all the commissioners have been pushing for more investment in roads, and to be able to make a 150% increase is phenomenal. It does go back. We've talked, Mr. Wobser, about some of the savings and where we've been able to find those savings, but a big part of it does go back to an important initiative by the Finance Committee and by the Finance Director at the time to find a way out of the insurance pool in which we were drowning. We were in an insurance pool, health insurance pool, where we were providing basically a subsidy to the other pool members, and there was a strong recommendation made at the time to get out of that and change the program that we have today, which has been phenomenally successful. And I know that's a good part of where the savings are coming from. So that was a team effort to get us here, and congratulations.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody who worked on that. Moving on to the rest of the presentation, I will start with the donations. I'd ask for a donation of $500 for the Sandusky Police Department was received from Firelands Winery. If we could have a motion to approve that donation.
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Secondarily, a donation of $500 for the Sandusky Fire Department, also from Firelands Winery.
Someone care to make a motion to accept that?
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
A donation of $50 of a McDonald's gift card to the Sandusky Fire Department received from an anonymous family of a patient as a thank you for picking up their family member in the ambulance numerous times. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
And then finally, a $1,000 donation received from the Brady family. This included a cash donation of $258.09 toward the cost of a new podium for the City Commission chambers, which you can see is on display for the first time at tonight's meeting. An in-kind donation of a full-color City Seal logo, which is now affixed to the podium, valued at $741.91 was also received. The podium was designed and built by the same company who built out the furniture in the new commission chambers. So I'd ask for a motion to...
So moved.
Yep.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? That is a beautiful seal. That's really nice work. Thank you, Mr. Brady.
You're welcome.
Without objection, motion be approved. Now let's vote on that one. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion passes.
Moving on to the police department, we want to congratulate Lieutenant Dana Newell on receiving the Community Service Award at the 69th Freedom Fund Banquet hosted by the NAACP on October 19th, a well-deserved recognition for his over 24 years of service to the community. I was very fortunate to be able to attend that along with several of the commissioners that I saw there that night. It was a really special evening, not only for Detective Newell, or Lieutenant Newell, I should say, but also it was amazing. There were probably 600 people in the room that night, and it was a really strong attendance for an important organization and to recognize one of our own for a lifelong of great service with the police department. For the fire department, they participated in Trick or Treat at Cedar Point. Also, they've been very busy with Fire Prevention Month, giving safety talks and tours of the fire station to school children. Moving on to Public Works, a thank you to Dan and Mary Grieger of Bayview and Barnes Nursery of Huron for donating the 35-foot blue spruce that will illuminate Shade Mylander Plaza throughout the holiday season. The tree will arrive downtown during the week of November 11th. Also an update with a $5,000 donation received by Wendy Allen in January of 2019 for tree plantings throughout the city. Staff was able to plant 20 trees in one of the areas most impacted by the sidewalk repair project a few years ago. There are now 5 new trees on 50th Street, 1 on 46th, 4 on 44th, 9 on 42nd, and 1 on Columbus. A big thank you again to Miss Allen for this general gift towards improving our urban forest. Also, various divisions have begun routine winterization throughout the city, including removal of drinking fountains, docks and buoys, draining of park fountains, and closure of restrooms and other facilities, saving any facility in use for business or recreation until last, unless weather temperatures dictate otherwise. And on Monday, November 4th, street crews will implement winter traffic patterns on the Milan Road overpass at the Butler Street ramp. Also, facility and property staff have started stringing lights in Washington Park. I saw them out there this morning on my walk to work. For the holiday season, we'll be hanging light pole, garlands, and banners along downtown streets in early November. Also, the Streets Division will begin citywide leaf collection on November 6th. There will be a drop-off area for bagged leaves near the Marquette Drive entrance to the City Service Center from October 21st to January 6th. For questions about the city's leaf collection program, call 419-627-5829. Again, that's 419 627-5829. And a congratulations to the following staff for their promotions. Bill Birch Jr. was promoted to Chief Operator, and Dawn Bennett was promoted to Utility Operator at Big Island. Joe Dowk was promoted to Maintenance 3 in Streets and Traffic, and in Water Distribution, Aaron Fraley was promoted to Maintenance 3, Construction Maintenance, and Bailey Rarick was promoted to Maintenance 3. Moving on to the Planning Department. The regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled Tuesday, November 26th at 4:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. Board of Zoning Appeals has been scheduled for Thursday, November 21st at 4:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. Landmarks Commission scheduled for Wednesday, November 20th at 4:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. The regular Arts and Culture Commission meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th at 5 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. And also, I'd like to announce the appointment of Michelle Newell, an employee of Sandusky City Schools, to the Public Arts and Culture Commission. She'll be replacing Raj Shepard, who recently stepped off that group. The ordinance calls for the appointment of a representative of a high school and/or college art program. Michelle is the coordinator of the Junior Arts Academy, which is geared towards students in grades 3 through 6, and also part of the Great Lakes Visual and Performing Art Association with Sandusky City Schools. That concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Does that require?
I think it did.
No, you did make that appointment on your own. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I just wanted to give everybody the update.
Yep, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments for the city manager? If not, then are there any items of old business? Are there any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Brady.
I would like to make a motion for one executive session for personnel, the evaluation of Commission Clerk Cresser.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the evaluation of you?
I have to.
That's it?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
That executive session is set. Any other items of new business? Then we'll turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission, step to the microphone, please. Give us your name and address and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. The topic that I want to bring up is the trees in the boulevard. I'm looking at a copy of the minutes from the July 30th Tree Commission meeting, and it's stating that we're able to plant 470 trees this year, up from the original 270. I think the bid came in lower, so we're adding more trees. It says that over half of them will be, the trees will be planted not in the boulevard, but in the city parks. I'm curious. I'm being told that there's some places, some boulevards, that people have been waiting for trees for 4 years. I had a lady contact me the other day that said that in the 700 block of Perry Street, she had asked the city to come and trim her boulevard tree, which they did, but what they ended up doing is she came home that day and the tree was actually gone. She had no idea that there was even a tree commission or what the process was to have a replacement tree put in. And so I told her that there was a tree commission and you know how to go about that process. I would have to think that there's a lot of people that don't know what the process is to replace their boulevard tree. There's probably a lot of people. I even asked her, I said, do you know there's a tree commission? She said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm thinking that maybe, and Mr. Waddington's on the tree commission, that maybe they could discuss some kind of a plan moving forward, that if a tree is taken down, that individual, that homeowner should get a certified letter or something from the city saying, hey, we had to take your tree down, do you want a replacement? I'm hearing that some people are actually getting letters like that. Some people aren't, so it sounds like it's a not well-defined program, and I think that there needs to be some definition moving forward. And I'm not here to complain about that whole program, because we are much further ahead today than what we were 5 years ago. But there's some finer details that really need to get worked out so that people have the opportunity to say, yes, I want a tree, no, I don't. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwanger.
I'd like to add to what Tim was talking about. back in 2014, I think some of you remember me standing here before you saying, city took out, I think it was over 9 trees out of 14 on Adrian Circle. We were told at the time that, well, I'll go back. Some of the residents received a letter stating that this was going to happen because of the sidewalks being bulged because of the roots. It took a long time. We've been there 48 years. And it took a long time for those roots to even move it an inch. But the point is, some did not receive a letter. We did not receive a letter. Mr. and Mrs. Valley received a letter. I happened to see it, and it gave you information about it. Your choice was, and this was a choice that they were given in the letter, and verbally to me, by someone named Anthony that was working on the project. You can have your sidewalks fixed for free if you allow us to take down your tree. Well, after they inspected the sidewalks, and we were told that all these trees had to come out, I went out and inspected the sidewalks. And I talked to Anthony, and I said, they did not inspect very well, because there were some that were worse than the ones that were replaced or taken out. So at that time, you know, we had a choice. I went around to the neighborhood, every house, and said, your tree was taken out. Do you want a tree? Because that's what I was told to do. Those that said yes got a tree. Those that said no didn't get a tree. Most of that was because they were afraid that those trees would grow up in a big hurry and fall over on their house. That's their choice. But that street was demolished aesthetically because those crimson maples made an arch in the fall and the summer. It was beautiful. Now you have 5 trees left on Adrian Circle. 5 trees. I don't think there should have been a choice in that matter, but it's a democracy. But the whole program was not done well, and I have a copy of that letter, and I couldn't put my hands on it before tonight. But that whole program was done haphazardly, and I heard that, and I'm speaking pretty much because he looks really interested. I heard that there was money allotted for sidewalk repair, and they were going to tie that in with the trees. There was not money for both as a joint effort. It was money for sidewalk repair. And way back in 70s or whenever it was, 80s maybe, we had to repair a piece of our sidewalk. It was, you know, we had to pay for it. It was put on our taxes. I don't know where that went, but I think, and the fact down Pipe Street, we want sidewalks too, for the kids to walk to the bus. But we were told that the neighbors in that area didn't want to pay for their sidewalks. Well, okay, they didn't, and they still haven't. So, but yet we were required to fix our sidewalk and pay for it. But
Mr. Chairman, should I respond to that? In 2014, I was not on the commission then. I'm on the tree commission now. And tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we do have a meeting.
I'm going to be there.
Okay. And then the process that Mr. Schwanger brought up, that's probably a good idea. There's several different committees and groups throughout the city, and I think there's got to be a better way for us to get that information out.
There's got to be. We've got an engineer who can figure out Venice Road and all that. We can figure out how to make neighborhoods look beautiful in a Ohio tree city. It's ludicrous. My neighbor, one of the city came out. I know I'm over, but this is important, and you're gonna have to tie me down or drag me out or arrest me. A neighbor, there was someone out trimming her tree. I mean, big branches. And I walked down and I said, "What are you doing?" And this new certified horticulturist or whatever, arborist, told me that we're trimming this tree, and the resident called and asked, now wait, resident called and asked for their blue spruce to be trimmed in the boulevard. There's not a blue spruce in the boulevard, and what he trimmed was not a blue spruce, so why wouldn't he check on that? If he's a certified arborist, why wouldn't he have checked with somebody to say, wait, this says blue spruce? Okay, blue spruce. And I mean, I called the neighbor. She doesn't live there now, they moved, but they still own the house. I called the neighbor, and she said, I didn't call, the house is in her name. I didn't call, maybe it was my brother, and I went down to get some freedom of information. I wanted to know who wrote the order, who took the order, and why that tree was cut, not cut down, but cut.
Well, I thank you both for bringing to our attention the deficiencies that we may have, and
Oh.
I've made several notes, and we'll follow up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 Fifth Street. I'd like to comment on Hank. Everybody's quiet about this. Hank was well-respected, racked up the awards. That was what he did was completely out of character for Hank. Something serious had to go down here for him to walk off the job with no notice or anything. And I think we need to get to the bottom of it. I know it's said, done, and it's over with, and it's a shame. We have lost two key people, the city attorney and the finance director, within 2 years. We need to find out why we're losing those people. These people keep our wheels greased here. They're very important to the city. We cannot have a revolving door on those positions. I don't know if something's going on with the city manager. There's no place to whistleblow. You guys put both those positions right under the city manager. There's no place to go to whistleblow if there's something going on. I don't know what's going on. I was in the finance committee on Friday, and they didn't want me to talk about it, but I got my comments in anyways. But they said the auditor was in touch with the finance chairman, wanted to know what's going on down here. Are the books okay? The chairman said, yeah, they're okay, verbally okay. I think we need to, because of the situation, we need to have an audit on the books to clear the way for somebody else who's coming in to take over the books, just as a precaution. I don't know what's going on here, but that's a shame that that had to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else present wishing to address the commission?
Greetings, Mr. Chairman, others, Tom Lamarca, 206 48th Street. First off, a couple of the microphones still seem to be off, or perhaps you're sitting too far back from the microphone, so please use it if you don't mind. Safety, the word safety was used a lot tonight for both water and roads, and I think that's really a great time for me to bring this up again. I know I'm beating on a dead horse. The interim finance director, Ms. Martin, stated that we're only $2,000, I believe, over budget and overtime for the fire department. You know, thank God that Perkins, Margaretta, Huron, and Berlin Heights and everyone else comes to our aid on a regular basis, because this past weekend, again, we had Perkins, Huron, Margaretta, and I don't know who else, get called in to assist Sandusky with emergencies that were happening, fires, et cetera, along with the EMS being called and running just wild and crazy. Those guys are just overworked to the max. And then in addition to that, we called in a 4-person crew to help that, a 4-person off-duty crew. So the 2,000 that we are allegedly over budget right now, I'm sure that we just doubled that this past weekend by calling in that 4-person crew. if we could take a look at what's going on there. I would like the commission to take a second step back on the thoughts of moving the police and safety services building from Meg Street to the American Cran site and spending $15 to $20 million on another big glorious building, because on the positive side, we're going to own that. But on the negative side, I don't think that we need to do that. I think that we need to capitalize on the site that we have on Meg Street. The court's there. The court doesn't have to listen to trains going by every 7 to 9 minutes that they'll encounter once they do move, if you do move the site over to the American Cran site. So the judge isn't going to be happy with that. If you have a jury, they're not going to be happy with that. I don't know that you get into juries over there on a regular basis. But then you could take advantage, and maybe, you know, the recreation group is meeting there now, so maybe you could add a room on for them. I don't think they need this big grandiose meeting center, but perhaps I'm wrong on that. But you could capitalize on the skateboard park that's now there and add to it. The basketball courts, you could throw those in there and make them lighted. You've got parking there for that. That would be good. The tennis courts are already there. Yes, they need to be reworked. But again, it's all recreation oriented. We've got a fishing pier there that's right behind it. In the event that there's any crowd control problem, you have immediate police response because they'd already be there. So that's a win-win situation in my book. You could create a walking trail around the water, adding to the bike path that all 12 people are looking forward to. So, you know, keeping that in mind. Regarding the boiler that's come up tonight, $30,000 for a boiler repair, yeah, it's kind of high, but you know what? Boilers are expensive, and not everyone can work on boilers. And we're going to be in that Meg Street site for at least, at a minimum, 1 to 2 years down the road, even if you build a new building. So with that in mind, I would suggest that you consider shopping and getting bids for new boilers right now for that building. Start working on that now. Bids don't cost you anything to get a bid. And even if it does, if somebody says, oh, I'll bid it, but it's going to cost you $500, get her done, because you're going to need to replace those boilers. 1 minute. Finally, with the success of Cedar Point on the sale of their $99 gold ticket passes, or whatever they call them, I'm hearing variations on what they sold of 200,000 or 250,000 passes. But good for them, good for the city of Sandusky and all the tourists coming in. Now, the downside to that is they sold all those passes. We're going to get an amusement park tax one time. And that means that there are going to be many people that would normally have come to the park 2, 3, or 4 times and paid a daily ticket pass. They won't be paying that ticket pass multiple times next season. So therefore, I hope the Finance Committee and Director is remembering in their mind to consider that we're going to be having perhaps a big decline in the amusement park tax to the city coffers next season. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Thank you, Mr. Marco. Anyone else present wishing to address the commission? If not, then we will take a 3-minute recess and resume with our executive session.